Hi everyone, I'm Krishna. As you have seen the previous video about what is MCP, today's presentation is about to understand why does MCP exist? What's the idea behind MCP? Well, really, there are four different things. The first thing is to understand is that LLMs and models are great, but they lack interactivity with the outside world. You can use ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, or Anthropic, or a Gemini, Google Gemini, for so many productive things. You can use it to create emails for you. You can use it to draft a marketing campaigns for you and think like that. However, in order to take that and usually send the email or run an ad on a Facebook or do all these things, you have to go outside of LLM interfaces like ChatGPT, Copilot, etc. So LLMs and sessions are a great way to create a content and are good for chat interface. But all they can do, they can they can't interact with the outside world. So because of that, functions or tool calling became a thing which enables LLMs agents think like that to interact with the outside world. And LLM, along with a set of tools, is an agent. However, the downside of this is all the framework have a different tool, a calling mechanism. There are some frameworks like OpenAI Agent Framework, which uses a strict Pythonic functions to use a tool calls where you have other types of frameworks like LangChain or a Crew AI that use other methods to actually call a tools. So there is a now a standard framework in order to call a tools with LLMs. The next thing to know here is that many functions or tool calling scripts were being developed separately. And not only were they being developed separately, but many of them were not even endorsed by the underlying API provider. And really, there are two things to know here. Let's say if I'm creating an agent that is able to read and write emails, well, I have to create a functionality that basically interact with the Gmail API. In order to be able to do that, which is a great, but I'm probably doing that. Bill across the street is doing that. A John across the town is doing that. Everyone is basically doing that, right? So why not just create one standard for it? One standard that links the Gmail API to any LLM provider. The other thing to note here is because I'm creating an interface for a Gmail API to connect with the LLMs, the Gmail API gets updated, then the thing I created a breaks, which then produces an issue because then I need to keep up with the Gmail API and make sure that the code I created that interface, the LLM, the Gmail API, is also up to date. And that is very annoying and can get outdated very, very quickly. So the fourth thing here is that most functions and tool calling were running on a servers. They thereby making it impossible for LLMs to interact with the local machines. Most of our tool calling where let's connect this to a web API to do something. Let's connect this to a Gmail API. In order to send an email, let's connect to Airbnb API to book an Airbnb place to stay. Let's connect to a weather API to get a weather web browsing through like that. But there are a lot of cool things that you can use LLMs for on your local machine. For example, it would be great to create an agent that is able to go through your files locally and organize them. That is a great thing that someone created that. It is an agent that tracks your screen and records your screen and keeps you know any sort of a productive things that I can think of or shortcuts that you can do to make your work faster. There's also another great one, which is used by developers all the time, that basically reads a local code that they developed in a real time in Visual Studio or VS Code that provides them a guidance. So there is a lot of great tools and functions calling interactions that can be made that exists not on the server or an external API, but rather on your local machine. So the idea behind MCP is taking these four different things and thinking about clearly there's a need here. And the need here is to create standard mechanism for AI systems to interact with the external systems. And that's basically the problem that MCP attempts to solve. So we'll break this up a lot more in detail later on. We'll understand the historical behind MCP because will become a lot clearer. I'll also do some hands-on examples in later on in my future videos. So you can do integrations in as part of our external APIs. So you can explore how this MCP server and client is going to exist. So we'll start building our own MCP server and a client in the next video. I'm really happy about your watching this video. I'm glad about it. Right? Please subscribe to Day One Dev if you're not subscribed yet.